Jennifer, I'm really thankful for this Get Ready With Me video you're doing live and in person for us as we are fully ready for this podcast.
You could use that for something later.
We could start it like in the middle of me.
Yeah.
The truth is I'm just getting older. And it's a real problem for me.
Yeah, I heard myself at last say, why does it take me 5 minutes longer like every other year? Now I know. I need more stuff.
I'm not even kidding you now. Makeup these days, it is like they put on, no joke, 6 serums before
I've seen that. I don't.
Back in our day, it was one, a little lotion before you begin, just so it wouldn't drain your bottle. But now it's vitamin C, and then
how did you learn makeup back then? Because today people just watch videos. So when you learned to put on makeup,
magazines,
and girls taught each other.
Okay.
Yeah, your
babysitter, your cousin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's true. Or magazines.
Yeah, magazines. It's like step-by-step pictures.
Oh.
I will say I've learned a lot. And I think because I've applied this without looking at my face, that this is not the right time to say this. But I have learned a lot by watching videos on makeup, especially for more older women. Like, it's no longer wearing the black eyeliner.
Exactly. You have to do it different. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything's changed. And it's like, anyway.
Both my kids got married in the last 15 months.
Wow.
And they had a makeup artist do my makeup at each wedding. And I was like, oh, free makeup lesson.
Yeah.
The last tip I learned, there's this fixative spray. It's not called fixative, and so like we live in a sweaty, humid climate.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest problem is your makeup starts running off.
Yes.
And so my daughter's like, oh no, Mom, you just need this. And I'm like, what is it? She put a bottle in my stocking, a little mini bottle for me to try. Put it on this morning. So you don't sweat your makeup. It's cool.
Wow.
It's I'm trying to think of the name, but now, yes.
There's a name for it.
After you put your makeup on, it's a finishing spray.
It's like a stain seal.
It's like a hair.
It's like you're sealing your deck.
It's a fixative. Because don't you remember you would do collages and you'd spray this stuff on to keep the paper from curling?
It's almost like a hairspray for your face.
It is.
Yeah.
And it does. Yeah. It stays in place.
Yeah. Wow.
You know me, I'm eating it off usually.
I'm kind of cheap, so I don't like using that stuff every day.
Only on special occasions. When she's on a podcast.
Like
for special.
That's exactly
like this morning. Fresh as the dew.
Yeah. Are you ready to go?
Are you ready to do this?
Do you feel good about it?
That was bad. I hate puns like that. I'm ready. Let's go.
Hello, and welcome to the Almost Amazing podcast from the CityRise Network. Hosted by Jennifer Dennis and produced by me, Justin Kello. We're a podcast that was supposed to be focused on parenting, but we've kind of lost the plot along the way. Honestly, we don't know what this podcast is about, but we talk to incredible people who love Jesus, and our hope is to provide encouragement and fun whenever possible. If our lack of clear direction bothers you, we apologize, but no one is making you listen to this podcast, unless you're married to Jennifer. Andy, thanks for listening.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Almost Amazing podcast. We're excited to have you today. We're excited to have Justin. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show. I'm excited about our guest. I think you're going to really enjoy the things that she has to say.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, I want to say that yesterday the weather got a little bit crazy, and I don't like the feeling that there could be just a random hurricane in the middle of the day out of nowhere. Like
all of Texas and Arkansas is kind of like living in that fear right now.
Since that crazy storm that just pulverized parts of downtown, other parts of, it's now like, oh, there's a dark cloud out. Could this be just rain? Or is this going to be a category 4 land hurricane out of nowhere?
You know, there's words for land hurricanes.
What is the name for it?
Tornado.
Oh, no. This is like, what's
gale,
that?
Like straight line wind.
That straight line wind,
yeah.
But there's another word for it. It's almost like a hurricane on land. I forget the name.
Oh, a derecho.
Is it derecho?
Yes.
Look at you.
Yeah.
So that's like a new fear. I will say that Houstonians have just finally gotten away from the fear of flooding to where rain after 10 minutes, we're all like hyperventilating into a bag.
Now we've got wind to worry about.
But now we've moved into, will this be...
A derecho is a widespread, long-lived straight-line windstorm.
Yes.
That's what we experienced.
That is what we experienced. And so I feel like now there's a little bit more weather trepidation moving in. And we know that the Gulf is a little bit warmer. So I think we're looking at a tough hurricane season.
I can't wait. Listen, the thing about hurricanes, though, is they're coming for days. Like... This storm we had
time to get
was out of
clear
nowhere.
out.
It was out of nowhere.
I also want to say I don't like the summers, and I think this is because I really wish the Rockets were in the playoffs when we were having bad weather because it makes everything better.
Okay. Well, when was the last time they were in the playoffs? Probably a long time ago.
I don't think it's been that far.
Oh, really?
It may have been. I just want those Rockets to be great.
Houston has not been winning in sports this year. Dallas has been getting the wins.
Dallas is getting the wins. The Rangers, now they're moving in with the Mavericks.
And you know how much I care about sports.
And I'm so done. Did the Cowboys get pretty far this year?
Oh, I don't think so.
The Texans did. The Texans kind of made a play for some playoffs. I say all that to say I handle bad weather better when we've got some teams in the playoff.
Okay. Great.
I know that's a weird thing, but it's a city thing for me.
A bizarre thing to say, a connection to make.
So tell me, how are you?
Well, before we go further, I do want to say, hey, it's summer. We are moving into an every other week schedule because we're overwhelmed with so many things.
We're so
like, I know for you, you've got a lot of kids stuff happening. If you've been going to our church for a while, you know that we're in the midst of transitioning some things as far as branding and websites and, all the exciting things. All these things that our pastor shared about at Deep and Wide Day, a lot of it touches or lands in my department. And so there's a lot of stuff we're doing this summer. So we do love you, but we got to slow down this summer.
We're also we're in the process of beginning a new children's village on the Bel Air campus.
Sure.
And we are in the process of finding a couple of directors for that. Yeah. So we're in a hiring mode.
Yep.
And then we've got VBS, we've got Super Server stuff, we've got kids stuff camp, we've got Pine Cove, Camp of the City. We have so much going on.
You're moving a sweet daughter to college.
And I'm moving my sweet
We just had a beautiful party for her.
Thank you for coming.
At Melissa's house.
Can I just tell on Justin? Can I tell you something funny? Oh, okay. Can I tell?
I guess so. Let's go.
You stayed around so long at the party.
Yeah.
You stayed. The party ended at 4. It's like 7:50, and I'm like, Justin.
I don't want to leave.
Justin's like, I'm going to have to go back to my children.
That's exactly what I said.
I'm like, well, we're heating up dinner, Justin.
It was a great party. Melissa is such a sweet person and such a great hostess.
We love her.
Beautiful home, like really great setup. The lights are like flickering from like people working electricity because it's like the day after the storm. But it was still a beautiful party. It was funny. I looked around at one point and I was like, oh, every adult in this room has been on our podcast. I was like, we really have talked to a lot of people.
Jennifer gets her podcast from.
Her whole friend circle. But then, yes, it was funny. So I was talking to Andy, because honestly, I stayed a little bit longer because I didn't get a chance to talk to Andy. And so I was just like, talking to him.
You love to catch up.
And then I was like, I don't really want to go home because my kids are there and they're really being like.
And they're awake.
We had an unplanned 3-day weekend because they canceled school that Friday.
Yes.
And so I was already like, I am so tired of these children because they.
Let me say, I will say this: when you come pick up your kids from ACV, I've gotten to see that this week. They are bonkers happy to see you.
They are.
You cannot be as cranky as you seem.
That's
like
true.
It's not just like, hey, Dad. It's like your son is jumping up and down, Dad.
Yeah.
And Maggie has things to tell you. Yeah. And I really only thought they got that way for Kristen because obviously she's the favorite of the family.
Of course.
But they go bonkers happy to see.
Listen, there's a lot of complicated feelings about being a parent. I know that. So here's the thing. So one, you talk about like kids driving you crazy. There's some days you're like, I don't want to be around them. But then you think like you get like one of those like parent thoughts of like, what if I lost my child? And you start weeping. You know what I'm saying? It's just funny. Like,
really is.
You're like, I don't want to be around my kids, but if God takes them away, I will not be, it's this weird thing.
Well, I'm glad you came to the party.
I was talking to Andy and here's what I was talking about. I didn't want to go home. And he said, surely, just turn on the Switch, let them play Nintendo. Because I was talking about how they fight all the time. He's like, well, let's turn on the Switch, let them play. I was like, Andy, it doesn't work there. They played Minecraft last week and my son burned down his sister's house in Minecraft by pouring lava all over it. There is an infinite world of things to do. And my son finds his sister's house and drenches it in lava. I was like, this is what we're living with. Like, there's nothing they can do together.
That kid is lucky to be alive because I know Maggie.
Well, we figured it out, but that's what I'm saying is like, there's nothing they can do together that doesn't require, they're chaos together right now. It's just, so that's my church party. I loved your party. It was great. Great. Well,
thank
food,
you for staying.
Friends.
Thank you for helping clean up afterwards.
Sweet daughter.
It was a good time. This is a sweet, hard time. It's sweet and hard.
Cause you're like 2 weeks? No, it's just
she goes early.
Oh, she has an early.
She goes
thing.
early.
Yes.
So we're really in the last few weeks of her being at home. She's let me know she's never moving back. I don't know why that was necessary.
Yeah, she says it every
but
day.
we're just we're getting through. And but I'm really thankful for the support that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of support, we've but we brought someone onto our team.
We didn't hire them. Somebody hired them.
We've brought someone to our CityRise family who is offering us an incredible level of support. And that's who we're visiting with today. So today we are interviewing one of my favorite new people. And I say that because we've gotten to spend a lot of time here recently. Yep. Please welcome CityRise's newest, here we go. I know the title, Human Resources and Strategic Planning Liaison for the Hills and Mountains. Lisa
You basically got it, right?
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got most of the words in there.
I know strategic.
HR is in there for sure.
HR and strategic planning.
Director?
For the Lord.
Director for
In
the
the
Lord.
Director for the Lord. Not director of the Lord, director for the Lord.
We got to be careful about that.
Yeah.
So Lisa, welcome. You're pretty new to CityRise as far as staff goes. You have hit the ground running because, as you might imagine, in our loveliest of ways, church staff usually aren't organized by actual trained professionals of HR.
Correct.
And so now you've got a lot of what would you call it? Finessing? Would you call it like reorganizing?
Well, yeah, I think it's a lot of defining. Organizing is a good word, not necessarily reorganizing, but organizing. And, the organization has grown so much in the last, especially 5 years, that having one person to run the entire business office, it just doesn't really work anymore. We're bigger than we think.
I think that's such a good point because people are like, oh, why do you need someone else in the business office? And I'm like, do you know what happens in our business office?
Mm-hmm.
It is so much. But like in church form, we've got to make that leap because, you're like, here's Sal, he's working with youth, but we also like that he's a good driver. So he also drives for us on the weekends. Right. And Sal also comes on Saturdays and he does the balloon,
the balloon ministry.
The balloon ministry. And before you know it, you're trying to, and Sal leaves. Sal's been called, back on the mission field, obviously, because that's where you belong.
To do balloons abroad.
Once you can do balloon animals, you obviously belong in missions. And then the person comes in, they're like, Lisa, look, we need to do youth minister. They've got to be able to do balloons, a good van driver. And you're like, wait.
Yeah.
And that is the greatness of what you bring so far to the organization. Let's start with a job description.
Of what are you currently doing?
Before we have a circus act in here. So, but you've been at CP. You've been at the Bel Air campus. Don't let me see CP. $5 in the jar. Yeah. You've been on the Bel Air campus for how long now? And how did you guys come to CityRise Bel Air?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And thank you for
7 minutes.
Question.
Bless her.
So my husband and I have 2 children, and they are young adults now. And when they were in middle school, we were looking for a new church because we knew our oldest was going to start driving. And we knew we would never let her get on 2 freeways to drive to the church that we used to go to. So we began to think about where we would go. We were a family that sent our children to Veritas Christian Academy, which is a small interdenominational Christian school in Bel Air. And so we had some families that were attending Crosspoint. It was the second year that Crosspoint was open.
Oh, wow.
And so we just missed the opening, but we got there. And so we've worshiped there for 19 years.
Did you guys begin in 2009?
I want to say it was 2000.
I think it started 2005.
2006. How about that?
Yes, it was 2006 when we had moved to this part of town, and so we were really looking for a new place, and we were just very excited. Bel Air was a new location for the church organization. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of young people. My husband and I were not the oldest people at that location when we joined. although now I think we might be or close to it. But it's a really vibrant campus, lots of young families, lots of children and young adults, young marrieds. And it's really a great place for our kids to grow during those, preteen, teenage, till they went off to college years.
So at some point you move from membership, being involved and engaged. I've seen you on a number of occasions, but we've never got the chance to hang out. So tell us a little bit about your career and how that sort of moved into you being with us.
Well, I will try to make it really short because I've had a very long career.
So just sum up your career into a verse or two.
Yes. So when I grew up, all the women in my family were teachers, except apparently my grandmother, who was a nurse, but no one knew it because we knew that she never had worked. So she had a nursing degree, but never worked. She married my grandfather, had kids. All the other women were teachers. They were teachers. And once they had children, they also never worked again. So it's kind of an interesting lineage. I'm the oldest in my generation. I was the first woman to go to college that did not want to be a teacher. But I really wanted to be a doctor because there were a lot of doctors in my family, but they were all men. And my parents thought that was so charming that I was interested in being a doctor, but they didn't really think it was a thing for young women. I'm not that old, but they really thought that I would get married and follow in the tradition of the family, that the women actually didn't have careers. So I did the next best thing. I went off to college. I became a physical therapist, began to work in healthcare jobs. I noticed that everywhere I went, I would ask questions like, why do we do it like that? Why don't we think about doing something else? And what do you think would happen if? And if you do that enough times, people say, I think you're the manager now. So
don't ask where to turn on the lights.
Exactly. So I was kind of a reluctant manager. I love doing the physical therapy, being with patients, helping them achieve their best health. But I started developing these skills as a manager, which ultimately led, about 10 years later into a full-scale hospital administration job. And I was the most surprised of at all. But the thing that drew me to healthcare was I wanted to help people achieve their best health possible, given whatever circumstances they had, whether it's an injury or illness, or, they just needed to do something different with their bodies. And so it was a great time because I realized I was doing the very same thing, just that I was providing for it in a different way, helping people develop structure, develop processes, and new ways of thinking about how they did the work. And so I did that for a long time. I had a great career as a hospital administrator. I ended up at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. We're close to the Med Center. Fabulous place if you're on the workforce or if you're a patient. And I've been both. And it's such a great place. And then I woke up one day and I don't know how it happened, but I was eligible to retire from the University of Texas system. And I had always said that when I got to that point, I was going to go do something else. I was going to figure out a place that needed someone that had the skills I had that otherwise maybe wouldn't be able to bring that talent in. And so first thing I did, I think like 3 weeks after I, played my retirement card, I came to visit Pastor Roger and I said, I just need some spiritual advice. I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do next. I really had no plan. I had no plan for retirement because I was not planning to fully retire.
Mm. Oh, dear.
I will say, asking Roger for advice about career stuff, he'll find a place for you.
Yeah, apparently, right?
His brain's always working.
He loves to put things together.
I know what God's saying, and he does.
This
and then
is very
because you like your plan. You were already serving on committees here in some form or fashion, right? So you were kind of already on the volunteer base on the interior of how this church operates. So you weren't coming in fully blind. It's not like, one, no one knew you and your abilities, and two, you kind of knew what this church needed because you had been watching it from a privileged position. Like people that just come to church on Sunday, you don't really see very much of how the church runs. But once you volunteer and get involved in the committees, you really see what's going on. So like when you were as a committee member, what did you see that you thought, man, this is what I feel like I could bring to the table to help this church go to the next level?
Yeah, well, when I served the church as a volunteer on committees, or even in smaller circles where I would be asked for some advice on something specific, I began to see that the organization really was rapidly growing. And they were asking the right questions and noticing the right challenges, but really didn't have anybody with the skill set to take them forward. And it really wasn't going to do it to just be a committee member or or volunteer, a project volunteer. Sure. And so I had begun to tell him, you might need to think about, doing something different with your business administration. Great lady, Leanna Fairbanks. I love her. I have no idea how she does half the things she does. I mean, she is like the consummate administrator and a professional. And she had decided she also was ready.
Sorry,
Jennifer's phone's going on.
Somebody's phone. Why do you have to?
I can't. Someone's phone in this room is going off. We're not going to say whose it is, but someone does have a phone.
Oh, it's my little niece. I'll have to call her back.
Yeah.
That's cute. All right.
Do you know how to silence your phone?
I don't know how to silence my phone because I feel like it's some weird form of rejection.
But we're talking about Leanna, and you're talking about how high capacity she is. It's one of those people that, like, if she were ever, one day she will retire. One day she won't work here. It was a situation where I don't think there was any backup plan for Leanna. It was like, all of our, the weight rests on her shoulders of existence. And so in what ways are you coming in to take on some of that to help it not be so on her shoulders?
Right.
Yeah. So Leanne and I started this conversation about what would it look like if I came on staff to help them. And we kind of batted some ideas around, and, we felt like we would be the right two people to help figure that out for how it could probably best move forward. And I just told them, here's what I'm really good at. I am really great at strategic planning, at, understanding challenges and developing a path forward. I'm a finance expert, and Leanne is an uber finance expert, so they didn't need that from me. And I'm an expert in human resources and figuring out what is our human capital, how do we use it, how do we, really get the best out of people, and how do we serve the organization to the best of our ability, using those resources. And so we just kind of began to naturally gravitate, well, how about if I did these three things? And how about if you did these three things? And that's kind of what we're plowing through right now. So I've taken on the human resources, strategic planning, some of the risk and compliance. That usually is a nice complement to both the human resources and the strategic planning. Those three activities really go together very well. And she's retained a lot of, the finance is a big one. I mean, it's huge, especially in any kind of a nonprofit organization. There's a lot of work to be done. And, handling the facilities and construction projects and security and that kind of thing. And, we're feeling our way through, making sure that what we're doing is working. But the goal would be that we would be able to back each other up. I think that is the way we should always operate. We should never have one person that does one really important task, because one person can only do one thing, and that's if they're available to do it. So it's not really secure for an organization to operate like that once they get beyond a certain size. Also, I asked how big the organization was. They said, we have 50 full-time employees and about maybe 15 or 16 part-timers. And I said, and I was thinking, how is that possible with 3 campuses and lots of activities? And I didn't know. I'd never worked at a church organization before. And then I came in and you gave me this beautiful office. The biggest office I've ever been in, actually.
Wow.
Yes, it's beautiful. It has a beautiful window.
It is beautiful.
Milton Street. And so I'm in the office like my third day, and I hear all these little tiny voices, and I'm like, what is that? And I look out my window. I'm like, oh, look at all those cute little preschoolers. Oh, look, it looks like they're on a field trip with their teacher. And I asked somebody, why are these kids coming in the building? And they said, they go to preschool here. And I said, we have a preschool? How many kids are in the preschool? Oh, about 180 something. Anyway, it was kind of a moment for me.
Yeah.
But it did give me a different appreciation for how big the organization is, because sometimes we get kind of siloed in the way we develop our programs. And we have no idea what's going on just on the other side of the building. And so it was a really good time to reflect back and really think about the size and, how we could be so much more powerful if we created situations where everyone could lean into their gifts and stop doing 10 jobs and really focus. There was a lot of work to be done. And so it's just a very exciting time, I think, to be part of the organization.
There's a quote, we rise to the level of our processes. It's something like that, meaning...
You always say that. You do always say that.
Are you being sarcastic? You're ridiculous.
We're going to start quoting you, Jennifer.
It's, I think it's Roger who actually says it. That, we can't get above or ahead of what we can organizationally make a good process within our organization. And so...
What have you noticed going from a full-time career in a non-Christian environment to a full-time career in a Christian environment? What are some things you've noticed in that change?
That's a great question. First of all, for me, like personally, there have been some hidden rewards. One of the things is generally speaking, people come to work for a church organization because they have the right motives. That is not necessarily the truth in the private sector. They have their own motives, but they are their own motives. Whereas I find in this organization, as I would expect in other church organizations, people really are looking for how to use their spiritual gifts and their everyday life skills to the benefit of the Christian community. And it's very different. It's a very different backdrop. The things that get exciting might not be medical breakthroughs or, landmark research or, a different procedure for running an operating room. But their breakthroughs always are with the people one at a time. And I love that. It reminds me when I was first in healthcare, and I love being with patients because I could be with one person at a time. When I think about the ministries, all the different ministries with students and kids and seniors and all of them, it's always aimed at one person at a time to really help them be their best, to be a reflection of the glory that God wants us to see and show each other. And so it's a lot less about me. When I first went to work in healthcare, somebody wisely said the biggest risk was people come into that industry because they're the best, they're the brightest, they're the most accomplished. And it's not long before they actually start worshiping themselves. And I saw that over and over again.
Really?
And
Wow.
at first it was very shocking. And then I kind of got used to it. It's like that frog that you're going to do an experiment with. You don't drop him in the boiling water. And I was like, this is not healthy. And so, I find that motivation is powerful in a workforce. You can use it for something so much greater than for yourself. And so I think that's one of the biggest things. Also, I love it that it doesn't matter what background people have, what their education level is, where they're from in the world, what their position is in life. Every single person can love the Lord and serve him as well as the next person. You don't have to be the pastor to do that. It's great if you are, but you don't have to be. And it's so much of, there's equality in God's kingdom, I think is what I'm trying to say. And I love that. It really helps me feel like I can love people in a freer way. It's really neat.
I love that. That's really cool. We don't think about it that way often. So I think that's really beautiful. So tell us a little bit about how you came to know Jesus. How did you begin your relationship with Christ? I think that probably wasn't the path you were on considering your family and background.
No, it's definitely not. So my family is Jewish, all of them. I am the only one.
The only one.
I will say proudly in this sense, I am proud to be the black sheep of my family because I know the Lord and I feel like I have such a different life than they do. And it's my prayer that one day they would see it. But, I grew up in a home. It was very religious and, religious in the religious sense, lots of traditions, lots of rituals, lots of, I asked my mother, well, why do we do this? Well, that's what Jews do. That's what they've always done. Your grandmother did it. Her mother did it. And I found that as I became a teenager, none of those answers really satisfied me. I didn't think, when I was in my working life later, I kept thinking to do something just because we've always done it that way is never a good reason by itself. Tradition is a good reason sometimes. But what I realized is I went off to college and I don't know what my parents were thinking to let me go to college in New York City. I was born in New Jersey, so I was a Jersey girl. So I go off to New York City. And there's a lot of trouble you can get into in a city like that as a young person from the suburbs. But interestingly enough, I met my first Christian who shared the gospel with me. First time I ever heard the gospel. I was 19 years old. Wow. I'd never been in a church. I had no idea. I actually did not understand the plan of salvation and what Jesus came for. All I knew was being raised as a Jew, we were still waiting for the Messiah to come. Every year we'd have the Passover Seder. The leader of the Passover Seder would go to the front door at one point in the ceremonial dinner and open the door and say a blessing. What I learned was they were opening the door because they were expecting Elijah, who would be the forerunner of the Messiah. And so I started asking my mother, well, what's this deal about the Messiah? Is the Messiah ever coming? And tell me about that. And I started to get a bunch of I don't knows. So I go to college and I hear the gospel for the first time. And my friend says, hey, do you want to go visit a church? I'm like, yes. So I went to my first church service at the Marble Collegiate Church in New York City, which is actually a church that Norman Vincent Peale was the minister of for many years. And
That's
he
cool.
wrote the book in the 70s, The Power of Positive Thinking. But I remember being in this big, beautiful church, organ music. I mean, I'd never been in a place like that. And it was just such a peaceful feeling. And at one point, I remember looking around the room and thinking, either all these people are crazy or the gospel is real. Because there's no way all these people on a Sunday morning in New York City, which was not known for its, Christian environment, that they would get up on a Sunday morning and take the subway or, walk or, whatever to come to church. And I'm kind of a linear thinker. So I thought, I heard the story. I believe it's historically accurate. I'd done a little bit of reading on some of the historical accuracy of the life and ministry of Jesus when he walked on the earth. And I kept looking and thinking, oh my gosh, all these people, they really believe it. And I started getting to know a couple of people. And it turned out they were mature Christians. I didn't know what they were at the time. And they just reflected the joy of the Lord and the acceptance. And I just woke up one morning. I'm like, this is real. And it was very weird because I realized it answered so many of my questions that I had growing up in a religious Jewish household about where was the Messiah? What was the plan? Why? And I remember reading, that the Jewish people are stiff-necked. They won't look down and they won't look up. And they're just not seeing it. And so, my heart is heavy for my, my friends and my family members, but there's great hope in Jesus. There really is. And that's how I came to the Lord. It was, it was nothing short of oh, really? That's real. These people all believe it. It makes sense to me. And I said, yes.
That's an incredible story.
You're just similar, right? You grew up in Jersey, Jewish family.
In Mississippi, Baptist family. I love that you can see the power of Jesus' hand through that, of pulling you to follow him and to know him. And I thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's really powerful, especially when you're going against the culture and the religious beliefs of your whole family. That takes a lot of courage. And I think that's really cool that you're able to do that.
I think you were in church probably before you were born, like I was.
Yes, right. Yeah. I wasn't even allowed to not go to a Southern Baptist church. I was in seminary. Funny enough, I was in a Baptist seminary before my church assignment was to go visit a different kind of church.
You'd never seen one. I mean, I guess
I never got a Methodist. It stressed my mom out. She thought we'd become drinkers.
I was never forbidden, but we just didn't. I didn't go to my friend's church on a Sunday.
Right. The Methodists were known for hitting the bottle.
Oh, wow.
In the South, because they didn't have as strict there were so many things. But I went to a Catholic church, I remember.
I think the first Catholic experience I had was at a funeral, and that's not your first experience.
That's not where you want to begin.
It's not the most exciting.
My first experience was a silent retreat at a Jesuit retreat house.
Didn't you say you liked that though? That helped you out a lot?
I had to be quiet for 72 hours.
Yeah. The Methodists have something like that too.
Like a walk to Emmaus or something like that.
Yes. It's
really
I've
meaningful.
heard great things about it. Yeah.
I just think that's really cool. And Lisa, we just loved having you on staff. You can tell. I was thinking the other day, I was like, it's so wild to me because I'm, working on some HR challenges and moving forward. But I thought it's so wild to me that I have a full blown hospital administrator.
No, you need it.
Helping.
And here's why.
Helping me organize this.
There's not a staff member who has more employees underneath them than you, I think, other than the very tippy top. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Youth pastor, you don't have as many. You have a whole preschool
Lisa's office,
world.
and she's like, "Show me what you lead." And she goes, "Put it on my board. Just put it up here on the dry erase board." Yeah. And I believe it is still there.
Yeah,
it is still there.
She's like, "This looks like."
It's a large.
However,
the most amount of people I think, other than the leaders,
like
report
Kirby
to
and
you. Yeah.
I will. It's an honor. It's an honor. And every day I'm like, Lord, if you still want me in this space, give me the heart and the motivation and the faithfulness to continue forward. But Lisa's been such a great, and we laugh because every time I'm like, Lisa, I wanted to make this change, and it's well, let's really look at this, Jennifer. And I'm like, oh no, here comes the job description talk. Let's start with the job description. I'm like, never mind.
I'll do it myself. You'd rather do it yourself than write a job description.
Never mind. And so she's just so good at it. And I will give her, whatever I come up with off of, off the internet, and I'll have AI work on some of it with me. And I send it to her, and she goes, I made a few adjustments, and it's about 400 marks in red. And I'm like, oh, I guess I really am not. And then I read it. I'm like, oh, this is so much better. It's so much better. Yeah. So I, for one, am super thankful to have you with us.
Yeah. Well, you're very kind to say that. I'll say, to reflect on your comment about hospital administrator, I never thought that I would leave the field of healthcare. I really didn't. I tried to stay in it after I retired from UT. I just couldn't find anything that worked. And I started thinking, I have so many skills that I could really put to good use in different places. And I just started praying about that. And I told you that, I came to Pastor Roger and said, he gave me this Bible verse, which I'm embarrassed. I can't tell you where it's from, but it says, the glory of kings is to search out a matter, and the glory of God is to reveal it. And he talked to me about that verse. It's an Old Testament verse. I'll have to look up where he got it from. And it says, we're supposed to go through the process and find things and search for them. And when it's revealed, it's to God's glory. It's not ours. Ours is in the search. Mm-hmm. It was really good because it helped me understand that I had to be patient and I had to just rest in the process. And I was not used to that. I was very used to, I'm a planner. I don't like to go on a trip unless I have the hotel booked, the road mapped out, the snacks I'm bringing. I mean, I got it all. And, I
can respect that.
And I'm married to someone who's like, okay, let's get in the car. We'll come back in 3 days. I'm like, what? But, right. but to rest in that process, whatever the process looked like, whether it was, planned or uncharted. And it's really been a cool time for me. And I'm still seeing every day, oh, that's what I can do with what I know how to do. I really didn't know how I was going to use the experience and the skills. But every day I'm telling stories so I can help other people understand things. And I'm reminding myself, God doesn't waste anything. His economy is the most efficient economy ever.
Amen.
He uses everything.
I think that's wonderful. And I think that you're wonderful. And thank you so much for visiting with us today. We have an end of the show question. And I think I would like to ask this question. What is the most ridiculous excuse someone's ever given you for not coming to work? Or what's the most ridiculous excuse you've ever used not coming to work?
And we'll answer this first. You can think about it.
I will say this. This is the most ridiculous one that I experienced. I worked at a retail store and it was at the mall. It was called Lerner, New York. You may remember. And I had this employee call me and she said, hey, Jennifer, I'm not going to make my shift because I've been kidnapped. Oh. And I was like, what? I was like, what? And I'm like, oh my goodness, when were you kidnapped? She goes, I think it's been about an hour ago. And I go, they let you use the phone? She goes, just to tell you I wasn't coming in. I said, kidnappers usually don't let you do that. I think it's really, thank them. I go, is there any chance maybe they could let you go, but you just come in really late for your shift? And she goes, let me ask them. And she talks to the kidnappers and she comes back and she goes, they think they could probably get me in a couple of hours. And I said, okay, thanks. Tell your kidnappers. I said, thanks so much. And I'll see you at this time. But literally called to tell me she'd been kidnapped.
Did you ever get the real story?
No, I said, do you know your kid? Like when it was unrolling, because I wasn't fast. I would never ever think to call in sick being kidnapped. And I said, and finally I was like, do you know your kidnappers? She goes, well, actually, I think I know one of them. I go, oh, okay. Well, that is really shocking. Yeah, it's my boyfriend. I was like, oh, wow. You probably need to wrap this relationship up. But
wow. Did she come into work?
She came into work 2 hours late. Her kidnappers were right. Wow. They dropped her off just in time. I was like,
wow.
Right. And you know what's even more shocking?
What?
I don't think I fired her. I don't think I fired her.
But you were like
that.
a manager of a retail store.
I was like an assistant manager.
I've never had that level of authority. So I've never had anybody call in for anything. For me.
Right.
So like we just have the worst case scenario, a camp chaperone show up late to the bus, like that's kind of the worst situation. I've never had someone like report to me and say, I can't come in today because of this. I very rarely miss work or anything. I'm terrified to like miss anything, especially in college, like skipping classes. I was not.
You didn't skip classes?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
Mm-mm. I paid for. Well, I didn't pay for it, but the people who were paying for it deserve for me to be there. So
that's good. That's a good perspective. Lisa, do you have one?
I have a real one. An employee actually once called me and said, and I could hear a lot of noise in the background. I'm sorry, I won't be coming into work today because I've been arrested and I'm down in the Harris County Jail. And I was like,
that was Kirby. God, I'm glad you bailed him out.
Like Kirby.
I said, so when should we expect you back? Like, I didn't know what to say. I was like, is this real? And it was real. It was not a joke. I mean, she really was. She had like hot checks, hot tickets. I mean, tickets, unpaid tickets, whatever that was. And so,
sounds more like Jennifer. Yeah.
So I thought, okay, it's going to be a 3-day tour. And, but I will tell you one other very quick thing. I did have an employee once ask me in advance, could she take a little bit longer lunch? And before I could say yes, because sure, before I could say yes, she said, cause my fiance and I are getting married and I need extra time to go downtown and get married. And then I'll be back at 1:15. Is that okay? And I have to say, I was thinking, I can't wait to see how this
Were
turns
you
out.
like, you take till 1:30?
Right. I said, oh yeah, I did. I said, take as long as you want. Like I thought, why did she share that with me? But I will tell you this, that was like, I don't know, 30 years ago. That young lady and I are very close friends today. And that was kind of an opening too, because I said, a couple of months later, so how's it going? I mean, you went and got married at lunchtime, right? And anyway, she's a great young lady. And, I loved about both I'm in Harris County Jail and can I take a late lunch? I have to go get married was I love honesty in people. Mm-hmm. I love it. And when they're not afraid to be honest with us, that is a sweet spot if you're working with people. It really is. No matter how outrageous it sounds, it doesn't sound outrageous to them. They didn't think anything of telling me they were in jail or getting married. And I thought, I think I could work with that.
Wow.
That's
pretty
good.
neat.
People do value honesty.
That's awesome.
That's good. Well, thank you so much. Justin's going to tell us how to get more out of this
If you enjoyed the episode, please send it. Send it to someone, rate, review, subscribe, like if you're watching on YouTube. If you have suggestions on people we could talk to, we'd love for you to send them our way. We do want to let you know once again that we are probably going to enter into an every other week rhythm in the summer because we are overwhelmed.
We're overwhelmed.
But we hope.
And work with us. Come check on our website. We've got some available positions.
CityRise.org/jobs is where you can always go if you want to have a career here.
It is a
CityRise.
pretty amazing place to work.
Yeah.
I love it here.
Yeah.
So that's great. Lisa, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you, Justin. And thank you guys. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. And we hope you are enjoying the warmer weather. Had to get the weather comment in there.
Had to.
We hope you've had an almost amazing time on the Almost Amazing Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Almost Amazing Podcast from the CityRise Network based in Houston, Texas. CityRise is a partnership of church campuses, nonprofits, and missionaries devoted to lifting our city and the world by generously giving the gospel of Jesus Christ. For more information or to find a church campus close to you in the Houston area, visit cityrise.org.